We're good.
All right, we're live. We're live with Jonathan Hogg from Canmore or Banff, from the Bow Valley of Alberta.
That's correct. I actually just moved from Banff to Canmore recently.
Okay, yeah, it's one community, but it's not one community. You have to.
That's right.
You have to have been there to know what I'm describing there. So Laval made sure that you were able to come onto the podcast, which I super appreciate you making the time because. And he said Tour Divide to me, and I was like immediately in. I'm always willing to talk about that subject. It's a bucket list ride for me. It starts basically, it feels like in my backyard, or finishes depending on which route you're doing it in. But something I've always wanted to do. You're going to be racing it this year, but you're also going to be doing it for a really good cause. So we want to talk all about that. But to begin with, how did you even become aware of the divide or interested in such a challenge? Because it's not a typical cyclist thing to do. It's pretty immense.
Yeah, good question. And just by the way, thanks for having me on your podcast. I realize this is, I think, your first interview as your new duo.
It is.
And
That's
it's
right.
my first
Pressure's
podcast
on.
interview ever.
Is it?
Make
Okay,
us look,
great.
make us look good, Jonathan.
You betcha. So the background on this, in February 2019, I was at Sunshine Ski Resort and I had an accident where I broke my leg very badly. Had surgery, the plate, the whole thing. During recovery, I was watching a lot of YouTube, and that's how I came across the Tour Divide, watching Lael Wilcox, Just Want to Ride a Bike, that video. I'm sure you've all seen it.
I had Lael on the podcast, I think, in 2021, actually. So you have to go back in the archives and find that. But Tyler Hamilton and I interviewed Lael, who is just, I think she's probably the greatest of all time for long distance bike packing.
Absolutely. She's something else.
Yeah.
Very inspiring. I'm very inspired by her. So after watching that, I thought, lying there with a broken leg, I want to ride this thing. And I thought maybe it would be years down the road when I have time. So it got on my radar. And as soon as my surgeon said I could put weight on my leg, I was hobbled up with my air cast to my fat bike. And I was fat biking in the snow with my air cast. Shouldn't have been out there. But I started riding every single day because it was just so liberating. So good for the brain. And so that's how when I also decided to look up Rocky Mountain Adaptive and volunteer for them. So I hobbled over there to get orientated to hike with them and then be a volunteer. But then COVID hit and scheduling, and I just never really had too many opportunities to actually work with them as a volunteer. Fast forward to September 2022, I was at a conference for my partner, she's a chartered accountant for Baker Tilly, a national firm, who's also one of my sponsors. And the motivational speaker got me very motivated, and I thought to myself, I'm in really good condition right now. In 3 or 4 years, I may not be. So I'm just going to do this. So on a piece of paper, I wrote down, I'm going to ride the divide in 2023. And then it sparked in my head that I should make it a fundraiser for Rocky Mountain Adaptive because it's such a great organization. And selfishly, I think having them in my back pocket as a greater cause will help me when it gets tough on the body and the brain during the event. So I wrote down that I want to raise $100,000 for them. And I changed it to $1 million because of a book I read called The 10X Rule by Grant Cardone. So I 10X'd it and I thought, what the heck, I'm going to go for it. And
it's only one little zero, right? Like whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's a big ride. I might as well make a big target for the donation. And when I told my partner about it, Chris, she said, you don't need big donations from people. You need a lot of little donations. And she's the one who came up with the Dollar for a Difference campaign name. And that just sunk into my brain and my whole being that I'm going to do this. And I didn't tell anyone else about it for about a week. And then I decided to tell one person, and I thought, I just got to open the floodgates and go for this and commit. So I started the campaign, and then eventually I sent an email to Rocky Mountain Adaptive and said, hey, by the way, I'm doing this, and I've already started. And I started a GoFundMe account, which I've never done before, and lots of first things I've never done before.
A bunch of learning on the fly.
Like
And
a
there's a
podcast.
ton of research to do for this event.
Can we pause for 1 second though and go back just a little bit and tell us about Rocky Mountain Adaptive? Because I feel like we're going to talk about it a few times and I want people to sort of know what that is. And it's your injury that inspired you to start working with them, right?
Exactly. So when I was lying on the couch recovering, I just thought, man, this is so hard on the brain emotionally. And I can't imagine having a permanent disability, physical or mental, and just being stuck and not being able to do the activities that I love to do. So Rocky Mountain Adaptive is an organization that helps people with physical and neuro-degenerative disabilities to get outside and enjoy all the mountain activities that we do. So for example, they started with the sit ski program. They do hiking, adaptive mountain biking, kayaking, golf, pretty much any activity that someone wants to do outside, they'll do it. Now they've introduced this year, indoor rock climbing and Nordic skiing at the Canmore Nordic Center. So they're just evolving their program and they do so much good for individuals. And one thing I learned about that's interesting is that's not it's not restricted to just the Bow Valley and Calgary. They have families from around the world that travel internationally with their family members who have disabilities. And when they come here, they're able to use their service and get out and do a lot of fun activities together.
And where does the funding primarily come from, Jonathan, for RMA?
They have a lot of regular sponsors, and they do a ton of fundraising throughout the year. They have all kinds of different campaigns. I'm not too familiar with exactly all of what they do for fundraising, but I know they have a lot of corporate and local sponsorship.
What an incredible idea to do this. I mean, I think the three of us understand how important the outdoors are and how important movement is and exercise and fresh air and pushing yourself in the outdoors. So for somebody who has either a physical or a neurodivergent handicap or
disability is
deficit, the new term, disability. What a fantastic and unique opportunity. It's not something you see every day. And Pete and I we were talking about this. We're both sort of embarrassed that we'd never heard of this before because this is sort of right in our wheelhouse and the stuff that we love to do. So one question I want to ask you when you talked about your injury, what did you injure? What exactly was the injury?
So I broke my tib fib. Right above the ankle, both of them are gone. And then up by my knee, my fibia, the smaller bone, broke as well.
Okay.
So I had the hardware installed on the lower brake and actually had it removed as well once it healed strong enough.
And are you 100% now?
Except for some sensitivity on the skin, I'm pretty much 99% healthy. I put a lot of work into making sure that I'm not inhibited by it whatsoever.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, when we talk about the divide, and we say racing the divide, there's a whole bunch of different ways to quote unquote race the divide, and primarily time trial or as part of the Grand Depart, which happens in June from Banff, the Banff YMCA, I think, still correct.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are you time trialing it or are you leaving on the Grand Depart?
I'm going to go with the Grand Depart.
Awesome.
Because that's how it all started. I'm a bit of a trail nerd. I like to do things fundamentally. And I think that's the only way to do it. Some friends think I should start south and come north and have a grand arrival.
It's so funny that you said that because I was thinking about our conversation this morning, and I've thought many times about the ride itself and the route that it takes. And I thought, if I did it, I thought exactly that. I would start late spring and I would start in the south because it's such a weather advantage to ride. And I think psychologically it's easier to be riding home, especially because of where we're from, than riding away from it. So kudos, you're definitely doing it with a higher degree of difficulty, in my opinion, because these northern passes that you have to go over, it seems like every year there's videos on Facebook and Instagram of people pushing through like 1.5 feet of snow, and it's just carnage.
Yeah, I think I'm going to embrace the suck and just go for the hard one. Yeah,
that's certainly to start in our part of the world, June 5th in the mountains. I mean, you can be cutting turns in the backcountry June 5th here in Alberta. So That's a tough grind for sure. I mean, look at the weather they got last year, right? They had everything from snow to pouring rain down in the desert.
Yeah, and actually down by Fernie, they had 15 evacuations for people who were not prepared and risking hypothermia or in hypothermia. So I think the advantage I have is I train in this stuff all the time. I'm not adverse to cold weather, and I know the gear to bring so I can move through the snow. Like I'll have ice grips with me and gaiters, and I'll be able to carry my bike as opposed to pushing it, because I don't want to do like push-ups for 4 to 6 miles.
And how
be able to move quickly.
And how adherent to quote unquote bike pack racing rules will you be? Are you will you ship some of that gear home as you get into the warmer climates, or are you taking everything from tip to tip?
Yeah, so part of the rules, there is the ability to ship things in both directions. So, for example, if I want to have warmer shoes for the start, or boots even, I can have a shipment with shoes and fresh chamois, anything I need, waiting for me at a general post office. And then and I can also send things back and lighten up and change for the season. So will I carry everything? I think about that all the time. I kind of think if I start with it, I want to end with it. But it's such an event that I've never done before. It's going to be tough, and
I think you'll know once you get to that
some
spot.
things.
Yeah.
So for the listeners and the viewers who don't know anything about what we're talking about, so it's the Tour Divide. You're leaving from Banff on June 5th, which is super early in this part of the continent for snow in the high mountains. You're going to ride your bicycle along the spine, basically, of the Continental Divide, all the way down to Antelope Wells, New Mexico. So for distances, it's 4,400 kilometers. So for our American listeners, that's the same distance as from Los Angeles to New York City driving. For European listeners, that's the same distance as driving from Paris to Tel Aviv, Israel. And for Canadians, it's the same distance as going from Vancouver to Toronto in your car. So this is not on a flat paved surface. You're going to be doing about 50,000 meters of elevation gain on this trip. And it's about 95% plus of actual mountain biking. These are ridiculously big distances. Now that we've drawn it out on a map so people can visualize this, you're not going on a road, you're going on a mountain bike. So tell us about your ride. What kind of bike is it? Are you doing drop bar? Are you doing flat bar? Are you doing suspension? Let's geek out.
Okay. Yeah, that's a really good description of the event. The only other comparison I like to make is the elevation gain is very similar from hiking from sea level to the top of Mount Everest almost 7 times, which is just, it scares the hell out of me.
And you actually you actually go over the divide, I think 22 times up and over it.
Zigzags back and forth. Yeah. So as far as the bike goes, the funny thing is when I committed to it at that seminar, I don't actually own a bike that's even suitable for this.
It does require a specific kind of bike. So that's exactly what we'll talk about.
It's very much a ready, fire, aim scenario. And because I have an enduro mountain bike, I have a road bike, I have a 23-year-old hardtail, which is no way I would take on that. I ride a fat bike. So I've been doing a lot of research on bikes, and what I've ended up with is through Outside Bike and Ski in Canmore. Yep. They're one of my sponsors, and they're going to help me get a deal on Norco Revolver hardtail.
Perfect.
120 millimeter front suspension. I'm going to use mountain bike bars, so flat bars, and I'll have tri-bars added to it so I can adjust my position better and kind of take the pressure off different body parts. It comes with a dropper post, but I'm very likely going to put a suspension seat post on it. Similar to what I use on my fat bike, which allows me to ride for 10, 12 hours as opposed to a hardtail rigid machine.
So you like the suspension seat post?
It's an absolute game changer.
Yeah. Which one are you using right now?
I can't even remember the name of it. I've had it for so long. Sorry, I don't have it right on the top of my head, but I think any suspension seat post is a really smart idea. This last summer, Chris and I were bike packing in Whitefish, and we passed some people who were on the course, and the guy had hardtail and no front suspension, and I was riding my enduro bike, which is doable for bike packing, but that's what I have. Anyway, he just saw the suspension on my bike, and he just sunk down and went, "Oh, I wish I had that so badly."
Most people do it fully rigid, though. It seems like the majority, which is, I don't know.
There's even a single speed category, which is really psychotic. That's taken old school.
Yeah.
One thing I'll say about the bike too is I'm not actually paying for the bike myself. So Baker Tilly and one of my other sponsors, the Banff Airporter, they're teaming up to get the bike for me. And then at the end of the ride, I have two options. One is to sell the bike and all the proceeds go to Rocky Mountain Adaptive. Or if I fall in love with it and I want to hang on to it, then I have to purchase the bike and give all the funds to Rocky Mountain Adaptive. So I really appreciate my sponsors helping out with that, because it's not an inexpensive activity to undertake.
Definitely
no, for sure. And then what you're going to get the time off work. Do you mind? What do you do for a living other than riding your bike down the spine of the North American continent?
So I work at Bill's Plumbing. It's a plumbing company in Banff, and they service the whole Bow Valley. They've been really generous with giving me the time off. And I just work in the office. I'm not actually a plumber.
I was going to say, you must be pretty handy.
Nope. Nope.
So
I can do demolition just fine.
So one of the things that I always go to when I think about the Divide, or any big rides that I'd like to do, like riding across Canada or anything that I've thought about, I always circle back to time at some point and start to think about that. So the work conversation segues nicely, because when you went to your employers and said, I'm going to do this, how much time did you suggest it was going to take?
I asked for the whole month of June off. So even though the race starts on June 9th, I want to have that week to just prepare and get a ton of rest, like really rest the body and not have to worry or focus on anything else, but just being in this proper mindset to do the race.
To go suffer.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how long? Do you have a goal time to get to Antelope Wells?
I think 21 days, but I have no idea. So that would average 210 kilometers a day on average.
Off-road.
And
way off-road, like
Yep.
huge elevation gains, crazy weather, animals, off-road, and remote. That's another thing that people who don't, like what you were talking about to begin with, go on YouTube and spend 15 minutes and look at some of the footage that people have from this route. It's amazing. Ryan Van Duser's another guy who's been on the podcast. He's got some amazing footage of the route, but you are definitely way out there and way exposed.
Yeah, Ryan's actually, his videos are my favorite because there's no music. It's just lots of really good scenery. And when he actually met up with John and Kira, his dog, for dog packing, I noticed that John and Kira are doing the race this year. And he's actually from Canmore. So I've been in contact with him and look forward to meeting him and his dog on June 9th.
Okay, very cool.
What are you doing for training, Jonathan?
So for training, I am cross-training. I want to have a lot of variety. I know there's potentially a lot of pushing the bike, so I'm hiking up mountains with the weighted backpack. So I have good hiking legs. I do a bit of trail running. Obviously, the indoor trainer. I do a lot of fat biking. I've gone for 8 and 12-hour training rides on the fat bike, which is a long time. Definitely not going for mileage. Nothing happens fast on a fat bike. But most of my rides are 3 to 4 hours on the fat bike.
Good. So here's a pro tip. A buddy of mine, Eric Larson, is a famous U.S. polar adventurer. So he's done the North Pole, the South Pole. He's tried fat biking to the South Pole. Yeah. And what he does when he's hiking biking is he puts a piece of climbing webbing across his shoulders and behind the bike seat, so that you're not always pushing with your on the handlebars. You're actually towing the back of the bike at the same time. And I've tried it, and it's brilliant. So throw a little piece of climbing webbing in there and hook it around the back of your saddle over your shoulder, and it makes a huge difference when you're pushing for hours up a hill. So
I love that pro tip.
That awesome. Is super crafty, Laval. That's very crafty. Yeah. I never would have thought of that. But
he's coming on he's going to be on the podcast, so maybe he can demo it.
Yeah, well, and because when people say pushing the bike, I mean, the first image that pops in my head is me pushing my light hardtail mountain bike up a piece of single track that's tricky to get through. But that's not what you're doing. You've got all of your gear too. So if you can be pulling it from the rear even a little bit, that'd be huge, right?
Yeah, it sounds like most people's bikes end up around 55 to 60 pounds.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. How extreme are you going to go with that? Are you going to be like shaving down your toothbrush and stuff?
I like ultralight camping. So
okay.
I'm going to try and, I'll cut the toothbrush for sure. I'll
great.
try and go as light as possible and just make sure there's room for water and extra water. Like
what are you doing? What are you doing
like
on that note, Jonathan? What are you doing for carrying your gear? Are you using something like an aero pack or a tail fin or just a traditional seat bag and frame bag? How are you doing this?
I want to be aerodynamic, so I'm not going to have panniers or anything like that. So I'll have the seat bag that goes behind. There'll be a triangle bag. There's another long bag that goes between the seat and the stem.
Yeah.
I have a couple of short ones, but I think there's one that's 2 liters that goes right across. So I can just
put
all my light jackets in there. For the cockpit, I'll have a couple of feed bags, but I don't want to have too much up there. Just because I want to be able to handle the bike well. And aerodynamics. I don't want to get too nerdy into it.
Tent or bivy?
A bivy sack, for sure.
Okay. So just a light bivy with a super light bag?
Yes.
Good.
And attempting to try and get to a couple of hotels along the way. Is that part of the plan to sort of mix that up?
I don't think I'll stay in the
every
hotels.
night. Just bivy.
I'll just camp. I love camping. I love sleeping in my sleeping bag. It's my safe place.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. What are you going to use for power? You got a dynamo hub in the front, or what do you got?
Good question.
Well, I looked at the dynamo hub, and it's pretty good, but it's expensive, and it's pretty exclusive to that wheel or that bike. Mm-hmm. There's another brand, Cycle. Oh, what's it called? Sometimes my brain goes into brain farts.
Yeah.
But it has it's new technology for old technology where it clamps onto the fork and there's a little wheel that goes on the rim.
I've seen it. Yep.
Yeah. So that's an option. I'll have some portable batteries as well for sure. I'll use, if I have a generator, it'll generate the portable batteries that I'll plug my devices into.
Right on.
I don't have too much technology. I think it's possible to get too carried away with that. But I do like the new Wahoo Roam Element 2.
Yep.
So I think I'd like to get that for the navigation.
And you're going to carry like a spot or something? Oh, sorry. Pete,
yeah, I was going to ask the exact same question. You taking a spot tracker?
Yep. Yeah, I'll have a spot tracker. It's mandatory to be in the race.
In the race,
Yeah, so we have a little Garmin Mini that I'll use for that. And that upload, and so for the listeners, what that does is every 5 minutes, it'll upload my position. And there's a website called trackleaders.com that they track all kinds of events around the world. But that's where people can follow me or any of the competitors in a race like this.
So on that note, Jonathan, we're going to put all the links to your GoFundMe page, to RMA, to your tracking. And having said that, is there any place else that people can follow you? Do you have any social media that we can direct people to? Or
I have an Instagram. It's jonathan.hogg.127.
Okay.
And then I have my Facebook account. So I'm not super great with social media stuff, but I think the GoFundMe is the best place for people to go. So and the GoFundMe is awesome. The campaign is called $1 for a Difference. And the reason why it's called that is because we want people to donate $1 or more, but something that's manageable. But more importantly, and I can't emphasize this enough, but to share that they donated through their social media, giving other people a chance or an opportunity to also contribute. And I think that multiplier effect is going to be really important to reach this lofty goal of $1 million.
Yeah,
So
I agree.
if you only have $1, that's great. Donate that dollar and share the heck out of it with everybody you can.
Yeah, fantastic.
Please.
Before we let you go, you are doing a couple of public events in the IGA parking lot, I believe, in Banff. Are you not? Is that the deal?
Yeah. So the new owner of IGA, his name is Sean, a really great guy. When I approached him just to put some posters up, he said, you know what you should do is take some space in front of the store and spin on your bike for 4 hours or whatever. And I thought it was a really great idea. So I approached Rocky Mountain Adaptive with that. And I also talked to Outside Bike and Ski and shared that idea with them as well. And they love it. So for the next 4 months, the first Saturday of each month, I'm going to be in front of IGA 2 times, in front of Outside Ski and Bike 2 times. And Rocky Mountain Adaptive is coming out with a display, some volunteers so they can talk to people about the organization and about my ride, my race. And I'll be spinning. They're going to have an adaptive ski there so people can see the equipment, and a modified or adaptive mountain bike as well. I think showing is way better than telling. And I want people to see, like, hey, I'm here spinning. I'm doing this race for myself, but my bigger goal is to help Rocky Mountain Adaptive raise some money. And this is some of what it goes towards.
That's amazing.
Perfect. I think that's a great way to end our interview. But I can tell you right now that Pete and I, when we hang up, we're going to be talking about getting you back before you do your ride, as we're approaching June 5th when the ride launches out of Banff. And then when you get back, we want to see, first of all, how gaunt you look and how you're feeling. So
I'd love to come back. That'd be fantastic.
We'd love to have you all skinny and sunburned in early August. It'll be perfect.
How much skinnier?
You'll find a way on that ride. If you're going to do 200 plus K a day of that terrain, you're going to find a way, because you're going to burn 6,000+ calories a day easily. And you can't, I don't think you can eat that much. So, so that week off that you have, try and put a little on because it's all coming off.
Carbo loading for sure.
Yeah. Well, listen, Jonathan, I mean, thanks very much for coming on. Absolutely flattered that you agreed to do the podcast. And what a great way for us to kick off this Adventure Audio 2.0. We're going to put all the links to follow you in there. I've already been to your GoFundMe page, and I'll share that on social media as well. And we wish you all the luck. Train hard and stay in contact. You've got our contact info, and we'll definitely be talking to you before you leave on June 5th.
I appreciate that.
Just
last thing I want to say is thank you very much for having me. It's really humbling, and I'm so excited to have people talking about what I'm doing, and hopefully people will contribute for this campaign. And when I'm suffering doing this climb, the Everesting, I think that's how you call it.
Yeah.
I know where I'm going to do that now.
Oh, good.
Perfect.
Yeah. We were talking offline about that.
Yeah, I've decided to do the Mount Norquay Road, and I think I have to do it 23 or 25 times on repeats.
I think it's 30.2.
Is it? Okay.
I do. I think it's exactly 30.
I think it's 30.2.
Is it 30?
Yeah, I think it's 30.2 reps.
You can tell he hosts the Everesting podcast.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know every suitable hill near us. Yeah.
You're going to be on the Everesting podcast as well after that. So
you will pretty soon.
Starting your media empire.
I don't know when I'm doing it, but I'm definitely doing it before the race, and I'll let you know once I've done it.
Amazing training ride. Yeah, please. No, seriously, please do. Please let me know. Yeah.
There might be some more cursing when I'm describing the experience. But
that's okay too.
You inspired me for sure. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you,
very
Jonathan.
much.
Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. All the best to you.
Thanks.
So,